I do want to point out, as you were speaking, Shagun, we got a letter sent by Cassie Ventura's attorney to the judge, essentially suggesting that Combs stay in detention, that Ventura believes that Combs is likely to pose a danger to the victims who testified in the case, including herself, as well as to the community. Areva, what kind of weight does a letter like this hold?
Oh, a tremendous amount of weight. Despite the acquittal of the more serious charges, we heard the most reprehensible testimony possible from Cassie about the repeated beatings that she suffered from Sean Combs. And one of the things the judge is going to have to consider is Jane's testimony. Jane was beaten up by Combs even after he knew he was under federal investigation. So I think the government has a credible argument that even when he knew he was going to be held accountable, that he was going to be charged with serious felonies, he still engaged in violent conduct. And to Shagun's point, no doubt, Sean Diddy Combs was, and by all accounts, is a very dangerous man. We've heard about witnesses terrified about testifying, about coming forward. We know that many of those fear today retribution for testifying. Dante Nash, the stylist, is willing and has come forth to state that he has concerns about his release. So this is not going to be an easy decision by this judge. He's going to have to weigh the testimony of these witnesses. And now Cassie Ventura, the star witness, weighing in, saying that she herself is fearful if he is released.
Laura, that's a really interesting point there about the potential dangers here. This is, of course, a defendant who also was denied bail multiple times, including because of concerns of witness tampering. He has shown a pattern of behavior where he kind of goes outside of the very clear bounds of the court. How might the judge see that? Even though he has been acquitted of these very serious charges, which in some other case might allow a defendant to be free while awaiting sentencing.
When a jury has spoken, the judge cannot rewrite history and suddenly transform what was a verdict of acquittal on those major counts into what it ought to have done. I say this because there is always a divide between the court of public opinion and what the jurors heard, received, and actually ultimately decided. See, one thing that was really fascinating about this case is because of the frankly iconic stature that Diddy had achieved throughout the course of his music career, many people knew who he was and had preconceived notions or maybe personal stories and ideas of who he was. But he wasn't actually charged as a standalone crime of the assault that we saw in that now infamous Intercontinental Hotel video. He wasn't charged in standalone crimes with respect to assault as related to Jane. And that has a very big impact on a jury as we begin to reflect on what they were asked to decide. It could very well be that this jury completely and totally believed everything that the witnesses had to say about these so-called freak-offs and about the violence and about their feelings of having participated or been forced to do so. But what the jury was asked to do was to evaluate what the prosecution was able to present. It was their job to present a case beyond a reasonable doubt that they could prove each and every element. And I have to tell you, it's more complex than the everyday conversations we will have in private parties and in our homes and with our colleagues. Let me just give you an example for one. On the verdict form for RICO alone, they had to first find whether or not he was guilty of RICO or not. And that was an enterprise, a group of people who engaged in a series of crimes, a pattern, within a 10-year period. And then they had to go through the line of various what are called predicate crimes, whether the government had proven the case of kidnapping, of arson, of bribery, of witness tampering, of forced labor, sex trafficking, prostitution, just to name a few. And then they were supposed to reach the conclusions about sex trafficking and the like. We don't know whether they found with respect to all of those different things because the verdict form just said not guilty for the RICO. But I want people, as a prosecutor, I understand it is very difficult for people to accept a jury's decision. But they have spoken. Now, the judge's decision is quite different. He has the decision behind him of whether this person will be ultimately sentenced and how, and whether he'll be released until then. But make no mistake about it, the court of public opinion behind me and all around the world, very clear. There is a mixed reaction, but these 12 jurors, they were unanimous.
To that point about a mixed reaction, Dominic, Sean Combs is somebody that, as Laura put it, reached an iconic stature, beloved, the way he sort of guided hip-hop out of the fallout of the 90s East Coast, West Coast battle, the death of Biggie Smalls and Tupac, and made himself a name brand, branded himself onto products, his music business perhaps more known than his music, right? What does this mean now that he's able to beat the most serious allegations he's ever faced?
Well, I mean, I think, Boris, you have to look at it sometimes within two contexts here. The context of the man himself and the context within hip-hop culture. Within hip-hop culture, I think there's going to be some swagger here. There's also going to be some blowback. We've already seen Diddy's longtime rival 50 Cent already dissing on him online. So I think that's going to be a part of that. And there's going to be a lot of mixed feelings out of this, I think. I think there are some people who always saw Diddy as a little bit of a impersonator, joining up with people like Biggie Smalls, gave him credibility. This now shows him in a very different light. I think also, though, what you're going to see to the man is, you know, I hate to say this, but in America, you can just ask Bill Clinton, if you say sorry enough, eventually enough people forgive you. Being that he can now legitimately say he got off on the majority of these counts from a prosecution who way overreached and underplayed. Again, I don't understand why you do RICO, but you only charge one guy. Like, maybe you need to look up what RICO is. To that, I think that you are going to see how he plays out the next few years of his career, given or given not, whatever the prison sentence might be. I don't think we've seen the end of Sean Diddy Combs.
Shagun, last word to you. Your thoughts on what watching him potentially walk out of the courtroom might mean as a cultural moment?
Yeah, hip hop is a very forgiving genre, right? It's got some hard, fast rules. As long as you don't snitch or speak to the cops or speak to the feds, and even then, we might, hip hop might look the other way. Diddy basically went up against the federal government and won. And in hip hop parlance, that is, I mean, you're untouchable. 50 even joked that now he's like the John Gotti of hip hop. What is so, and Dominic, you touched on it, the overreach of the government emboldens hip hop in quite a way to say, like, you came after one of our own and you lost. And Areva said it, we are overlooking the violence that this man is capable of. And I think that should not be forgotten. We've seen it. We've seen him caught in a lie, saying that this was a shakedown by Cassie. He never put his hands on Cassie. Then the video comes out and he apologizes. I don't know, but based off what the judge is going to ultimately decide, however many years he receives, how he will rebuild his empire, because a lot of it was on his taste-making ability. You wanted to be around Diddy. You wanted to go to his white party. You wanted to be on the yacht with him. You wanted to do all of the fun things that he embodied or showed. Now we see that there was a darkness behind that limelight. So I don't know the brands that are going to come and sidle up to him, which was what built his empire. I don't know the artists that are going to want to be in the studio with him. But I have seen women outside holding signs that said "Free R. Kelly." So in music business, anything is possible.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Shagun Oduolowo, thank you so much. Dominic Patton and Areva Martin, we really appreciate your insight.